Okay, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to do all things downswing. Before we do that, let's do a quick review of why we're hitting these foul balls in the first place. We hit terrible shots directionally because our face and path get too far apart and too far away or too far away from our target. And the easiest way to view the face and path variables is through the lens of the shaft. What is the shaft doing? Amateurs are constantly making errors with the shaft. This series is going to focus on that primarily. So the first video was the backswing. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. For this one, let's focus on the downswing. We are at the top. We've got a good amateur on the left, a guy who almost certainly is breaking 80, and we've got Justin Rose on the right. Right? I've drawn a lineup from their golf ball through the butt end of their grip, and you can see a difference already, right? We talked about in the first video that most amateur golfers are taking and steepening their shaft, just like this amateur is, through the halfway back position and getting across the line at the top, right? Very common. And from here, we're going to have all sorts of problems, right? And it starts to look like this. If we looked at 100 amateur golf swings, what we would see a lot, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of the time, as the hands are around the head in transition, right? Hands around the head. If you drew a line on the shaft on the way down, what you would see is a shaft that pointed somewhere around the feet, right? This amateur's in a better spot than most, but it's just outside the feet. If we did 100 tour pros in the same spot, again, hands are going to be around the head. We drew a line on that shaft, right? We would probably 98 out of 100, we would see a shaft that's pointed at or outside the golf ball, right? Now, what does this mean? We know that a steep shaft is a correlate for a shut face and a leftward path, right? Well, a shut face and a left path is going to produce all sorts of shots that we hate, right? Shut face. What are our shut faces? So let's look at the top row. Shut face and left path. So you're looking mostly at pulls and pull slices, depending on how far your path is. Right? We hate these shots. So what amateurs do from this spot is we don't want to be steep. We don't want the face closed and the path left, so we have to shallow the club, right? Downswing, though, is only a quarter of a second long. There's not a lot of time. And if we shallow it too much, which virtually all of you do that don't just come over the top and hit full-blown pull slices, we end up in what is called like a stuck position, right? We get the shaft too far underneath, just like our amateur has. I'll clear all this out so you can see it. A shaft too far underneath. And when the shaft is too shallow, again, that correlates with a path that's too far out to the right and a face that's open. So for the coordinated among us, you'll see amateurs hit some kind of flippy push draws, struggle with hooks and push cuts, right? But that is what is happening in the amateur pattern versus the pro pattern. You can watch this shaft. Instead of getting way underneath, as our amateur does, we see our shaft stays more or less right on plane, right? Which gives us a square face, relatively square path. If you've ever been to the range on tour, one of the most alarming things you'll discover is that their version of cuts look nothing like your buddies. They cut it a couple yards at a time. They basically hit every shot straight compared to what you're used to seeing at home or exaggerated about by announcers on television. All right, so let's review. Because of the backswing mistakes the amateur makes with the shaft and gets across the line, right? We end up too steep early in the downswing. Too steep is face is shut, path is left. So we have to do something to correct those face and path mistakes, and that almost always involves late shallowing. Late shallowing to open the face and shift the path out to the right, which almost always gets overdone and causes us to get stuck if we don't just come right over the top of it, which a lot of you are doing anyway. You don't even do the late shallowing, you just hit the pull slices. Versus versus pros, early in the downswing, shaft is pointed at or outside the ball, and then they more or less let that track down all the way. In the next video, we're going to talk about one of the other big influences for shaft problems, which of course affects face and path and ultimately produces our foul balls, and that is setup. Can we set up poorly enough to screw up the shaft? And the answer is yes.